How's it going, everyone? Thanks, y'all, for joining us. We're going to get settled here in just a second and jump on in. We're super excited about the conversation today with Ray and the team from Hernando to talk about the associate teacher program that they've been running in a bunch of the pretty amazing work, not just in Florida. I mean, we're now seeing this, Ray, to your credit, we're starting to see this expand in a whole bunch of other states as well as folks are wrestling with the shortage. So super excited about the conversation. And we can get everybody, let's just make sure we get everybody in here. We've got a relatively, reasonable sort of smallish group, so we're going to try and sort of unmute folks. If you have questions, right, we'll make this as conversational as we can. As a quick intro, so my name is Jason Lang. I'm the founder, president for BloomBoard. We're super excited about the partnership with Hernando and really Ray's leadership around trying to think through some pretty creative pathways to solve the teacher shortage. Ray, you want to introduce yourself, introduce your sort of folks here?
Sure. My name is Ray Pinder. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations in Hernando County, Florida. Previously, I was the Director of Human Resources when we started to develop this program. And we're, as we continue to struggle with teacher shortages and how to fill positions and do it quickly and kind of close the gap immediately and not 2 or 3 years from now. I have with me Amy Hunter. Amy Hunter is one of our associate teachers. She is at Explorer K-8. She is in our first cohort. She is finishing up with her first year, her first 2 semesters through BloomBoard and as an associate teacher. Alicia Rogero is also with us. And Alicia, I believe you're in that first cohort too.
I'm in the second cohort.
You're in the second cohort, okay. So Alicia is in the second cohort, and I have some other people on that are in the wings too. A mentor, I believe, is online, and some of our district support people around this program that are available for questions too, if you have any, as we move forward. So that's just a little introduction of who you see around on the screen.
Well, super excited. So Ray, I guess, we can jump in here. Do you want to just give us sort of an overview of, sort of the background, right? Sort of, history, sort of pre-associate teacher. I know you all have been doing a bunch of work on sort of pathways. If you can sort of share a little
on Teams. Oh. Okay, they just haven't let me in.
Dawn, your microphone's on. Okay.
There we go.
I think she's muted now.
Perfect. But yeah, if you can give a little bit of the sort of the background and sort of, what you were sort of looking for and sort of the initial sort of idea behind this as a teacher and what's that look like and sort of obviously the early sort of concept for it would be super helpful. I just think for folks.
Yeah, you're gonna have to not talk.
So I think that this conversation started actually when I was a principal. I had challenges filling math and science positions. And so the thought and the concepts actually started there. And then when I became director of human resources and I saw that this wasn't just a 1 school or 2 school problem, of course, and kind of knew that as a principal, but at a district level, you see a much wider view and the number of instructional vacancies that we had available right now. And there didn't seem to be a pipeline for filling them. There was a pipeline for, that we traditionally have going to, we did the same thing everybody else did. You have job fairs here and, you have some people sign up and you go to job fairs in other places. And then, part of what we do in education, we figure if we go 50 miles or more, we're going to find some experts. So we travel to outside of Florida to job fairs. And then for a while, we would travel up Northeast. And for a while, they seemed to have a surplus up there of teachers. And we got some over the years, but then that dried up too. So all of those, kind of right there options for filling positions were drying up or had dried up. Even our local college that we have here close in Tampa was thinking of closing their educator program because they didn't have the business. No one was going into it. So as our vacancies continued to climb, and I went forward with this program to my superintendent at the time, well, he's still our superintendent, his conversation with me is, that sounds like a great program. Where are you getting the money from? So my challenge then became, so where do I get the money from? So everything that I had researched was I didn't have the money for. And also the other factor was that it created a workload that was, I guess I could say, unbearable for the average person that might be interested. If I did find people interested, you know, hey, come work for us, and hey, you can work full-time for us, and you can go to school full-time. That sounds really attractive to most people. A large a large swath of the world wants to do that, right? So I was actually just going through my email one day, and I saw, among 10 or 15 others, one of those emails that you hardly ever open, but it was from BloomBoard, and I opened it for some reason. And I read it, and I thought, oh, this might be good. So I actually did what I hardly ever do, is sign up for a webinar and listen to Jason and BloomBoard and whoever was on that webinar. And I thought, this might work. So we got involved with BloomBoard, and that was the key that kind of set all of this into motion and put all of those other pieces that I had thought of before and made it possible. So what we do with associate teachers is we hire an associate teacher. It is a job description that we created. The full title is associate teacher substitute. So it is a substitute that we have in our district. Some districts have their own substitute. Some districts will have another company that does their substitute. We do. We have a company that takes care of our substitute needs. But this is a substitute that is a district employee. So we pay the associate teacher substitute more money. Our starting pay for substitutes here are $15 an hour. For our associate teacher substitutes, we start them at $20 an hour. You can see on the screen there. They work the same schedule as a teacher. We put that into the job description. They work in our county. Our teachers work 197 days, 7.75 hours a day. They're benefit eligible for all district benefits, and they begin their FRS retirement. Whatever, if you're in Florida, you know what FRS is. If you're in another state, it may be called something else, but it's our pension plan in Florida. So that clock starts ticking for their 30 years when they become our employee. So what this does is it creates a path for our teachers to fill positions, and all of that cost, because the other part was how do I pay for it? So all of that cost comes from our vacancy. So every district budgets a certain amount for a vacancy. So at the bottom of this slide, you see we budget last year, or whatever year that I think year before last, we budgeted $68,000. So that included the salary, fringe, benefits, everything. That's what we budget for each position. So at $20 an hour times 197 times 7.75, that's the salary out of that. The fringe was calculated at that time. The insurance, the district cost for insurance was included. That gave you a subtotal. What it cost for BloomBoard. I added the cost for a supervising teacher to be a mentor for this person there. And the total cost us was $55,086. When I added all that up, still leaves us $13,000 in leftovers for that vacancy position. And so this is how it's funded. So what that allows you to do is fill a position right now. A lot of the mentoring programs that are out there and state programs, it's you fill a position 3 years from now or 2 years from now. And, that'll help us, but it doesn't help us right now. So all of these associate teachers that I've hired are in classrooms right now, providing instruction, getting support from our district people, and that's a whole nother conversation of the people that we have around this program to support our teachers, and, create the best that we can for students, and grow certified teachers and give back to the community. We have all these people, and the part that you may not know is shortly after we introduced this program, we had 100 people on a waiting list, like immediately within 2 weeks, we had 100 people. My conversation with Jason when we first started, their question was, what do you think would be your definition of a successful program? Because as all good, people, we want a goal, right? So my goal, I said, at the end of the year, if I had 5 associate teachers in my county, I would consider it very successful. That's what I told my board when I presented this program to them. And right now we have 34 associate teachers in our district. So I'll stop there and we can fill in blanks if we need to about other questions as we go along.
Love it. Well, so, before we jump into sort of the what and the how, sort of Amy, Alicia, I'd love to sort of give you a sense of similar sort of friends, like, before you sort of were in the program, just you can give a little sense of sort of your background and sort of the work you were doing and your interest in becoming a teacher, and sort of what barriers you were sort of facing and sort of how that sort of has helped in the process.
Absolutely. Before I was a teacher, I went into a paralegal profession. I was working for lawyers, and I started doing that because it seemed to be the only profession that I could make enough money to support my family in, and that I could afford to go to school for. I mean, being a paralegal, I only have to go to school for 2 years. I couldn't get, my bachelor's at that time to enter education. When my mother, who is a teacher here at the school that I teach at, presented this opportunity to me, I was like, oh my gosh, you're telling me that I can get my degree and work at the same time. And also being in the classroom, the BloomBoard profile lets us actually do lessons in the classroom. So it's kind of like we're, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It's really supportive. It's really helpful. I love this program.
Okay. Alicia, any thoughts? Sorry, so for Alicia's going to be off camera. I think she's not feeling quite under the weather, but we really appreciate you being here, Alicia. Anything you add?
So when I was presented with this, I've been in Hernando County for 8 years, as a para originally, and I wanted to become a teacher, but I just didn't have the funds to continue with my bachelor's. So when I was presented with this opportunity, I really liked it because, as Amy said, it's a hands-on. So you're working and making money and going to school along with the support of the district, also helping us out with the cost of going to school.
Love it. And so Ray, I know as we've been sort of standing things up and obviously going through sort of the initial sort of couple of cohorts here, can you give a little sense of sort of what that process looked like for folks? Sort of what sort of were there, right, sort of issues sort of that you needed to navigate? I know you've had a couple different conversations with folks, so sort of in the sort of the upfront sort of setup in the process and trying to sort of make sure candidates had the support they need. Can you give a little sense of what that looked like and sort of how that has sort of played out?
You mean the structure that we have around to support, or the actual program and the nuts and bolts of how it was set up?
I think we sort of went through the nuts and bolts. I think the structure and like how you support the candidates would be
so what we have is when we hire an associate teacher, we interview the associate teachers. I usually interview with some principals that have positions at their schools initially, and it's a kind of a really quick interview just to kind of see, do they qualify? Do they have an associate's degree? Get a little bit of an idea of the person, behind the name that we see on a spreadsheet. And then from there, with qualification through Lake Erie, we hire the associate teacher. So the support that we have around the associate teacher is, I have Dawn Leo is our coordinator of recruitment and retention, we'll call it. I think it's retention, but it's recruitment and retention. I'll add a word to her title. And she has a great knowledge. She's worked in the district for many years, and she knows about certification and a lot of different things in the human resources role. Her job is to support the teachers ongoing and a point of contact, and also a resource when it comes to them becoming certified in that process. So we have that planned out so that our goal was that the associate teachers can focus on teaching in the classroom and let us do the other things that, let us help you. Yes, you're going to have to be involved in it, but we're going to guide you along the way. And we told them that from the beginning. We have 2 teachers on assignment that are kind of coaches. Lauren, I don't know if Lauren's on the call or not, but Lauren is our district coach that goes out and works with the teacher. And then the associate teacher also has a mentor at the school. So you have the associate teacher. We try physically close to that associate teacher if at all possible. There's a mentor at the school right there that we pay a stipend to be a mentor. And then there is a district mentor that will fill in blanks if needed, provide support to the mentors or the mentees, the associate teachers, and making sure that everything's, moving in the right direction. They help with questions and things that they need to about coursework, planning around the coursework, helping to schedule maybe some videos or something that they have to do for their upload, coordinating some of that. Our goal with the people that we have supporting them, like I said, associate teachers are focused on teaching and learning in the classroom, and we wrap that support around them to try to make them successful and support them in every way that we can.
Love it. Well, and certainly I want to make sure if you have questions in the, sort of from any of the attendees, if you have questions, you can either write them in the chat. Happy to sort of talk through them, make sure we can sort of get them addressed if you want it, that's easiest, or we can just sort of have folks come off mute to chat. I guess, Amy, Alicia, I'm interested in sort of from your lens, right? How have you been interacting both in terms of like the actual sort of portfolios and the content and sort of interaction with faculty around that? And then can you share a little bit about sort of interacting with mentors and some of that coaching support as well as you've been going through it?
So I actually didn't find it very hard to do with BloomBoard the first semester that I was with. I actually finished a whole month early. But it's not, I like the fact that I can do it at work, and it's not a regular college program where you have to write papers and go to class and all that stuff. I just do it at work, and really very rarely have to do anything at home. So I thought it was pretty easy. Now, second semester, I don't know, but first semester it was pretty easy. It's not that hard. You just have to have time management skills, because if you don't have that, then you're in trouble. But other than that, it's really not that hard.
Amy, anything you'd add just around sort of the sort of actual portfolios themselves or sort of the mentoring interactions?
Absolutely. BloomBoard does provide a amount of lessons, and then they provide artifacts after those lessons. And the lessons actually indicate quite well how the artifact is going to be presented. And then once the artifact is presented, you submit it to your professor. And they are very lenient when it comes to submissions with your artifacts. If you don't hit the nail on the head with your artifacts, they normally just send it back with your submissions and say like, hey, maybe you're missing these areas. And then they try and help you revise those areas. Also, before you submit any artifacts, we have, like Ray said, our district coaches. I have Lauren. She's amazing. She's wonderful in every way. She will literally come to all of our schools and sit down with each and every single one of us and try and help us work through to get to our submission of artifacts. She even went as far as translating certain things that I didn't quite understand that BloomBoard had, and I was like, oh my gosh. But she was really good at translating everything for me. Ray has always been there. Dawn has always been there. Everybody, we have like a full support here. Even my mentor, if I have any questions with her, she is 100% on top of it. I teach ELA and social studies. So a lot of the BloomBoard submissions this semester are math and science. So I did have to lean on Lauren and my mentor this semester, but it taught me something that I hadn't yet hit. So I'm excited to see what next year presents, because I might be teaching math next year as well. So, and it kind of gave me a little insight on it.
Ray, there's a question in the chat here around sort of who is the teacher record and how does it work having a certified teacher attached to the students? So if you can talk through that, sort of the teacher record question.
So the teacher of record is the associate teacher substitute. So in Florida or any other district, probably you think of that as if you have a long-term sub in a position and you report to your state, there is a way. In Florida, we report them as a long-term sub. So the job code that we have attached to that job description is the state adopted job code for a long-term sub. And really on the state side, it's a long-term sub. And if you think about it, it's no different. It's just a long-term sub for Hernando County that we employ versus Kelly Services. But if you employ your own subs, either way, the job code is there, it's a long-term sub. So that long-term sub becomes the teacher of record for FTE reporting, and we report that long-term sub. What we have to do is, because we've been audited before on long-term subs, and what we have to do is we can't stop interviewing for that job. So the job that Amy is in, that posting is still out there. That posting is still available, and we are interviewing for qualified candidates is what the state wants us to do. We're interviewing for that. We're interviewing for that position. And the good news is, the good bad news is that we have other positions available at that school. So when we interview for that position, we have that. If it's someone that we're interested in, we have them apply for the other position and we hire them there. And we keep track of that, and we mark that the other thing that the state wants is we're actively interviewing. So they want to see that the position's been open and we've interviewed this candidate we've decided is not qualified or whatever, and we've made those notes along the way. And in almost all of the cases in the past for long-term subs, if you do that, then we get FTE for that sub. I mean, if they weren't giving us FTE for long-term substitutes, if the state decided one day not to do that, I don't know how a district would function these days. I mean, we would be bankrupt. Yeah.
It would create a bit of even more pain.
Yeah.
There's a question in there around the sort of the employment commitment, sort of post completion on the program. Can you talk a little about that in terms of those? I know we've had a couple of those conversations.
Yeah, I didn't touch on that, but our associate teachers actually have two contracts they sign. They sign the employment contract, which is just like any other employment contract. It is a substitute job description with all of the, things that go with that. And they also sign a separate contract, and that's a contract that we had drafted by an attorney. And basically, and this is all, we go over this in the interview with them. I go over it with them, making sure that I Ray Pinder, have told them this, and before that they look at the contract. Because, in a nutshell, this is what it says. We're going to pay for your college. You don't have to contribute anything to your tuition. If you get any financial aid, that will go to BloomBoard also, but we will pay the difference, and it'll be zero cost for your tuition. And we're, the other part of the contract, the employment says what we're going to pay you. But this says we're going to pay for your college. If you don't complete the program, you owe us for what we have paid. If you do complete the program, and once you become certified, you have to work for us for 4 years as a certified teacher. And that's prorated. So if you work for us 1 year, then you decide, life happens and you go someplace else, then you owe us 75% of what we paid. If you work for us for 2 years, you owe us 50%. If you complete the 4 years, after 4 years, we're done with any obligation to the district, and we hope you stay with us, until retirement. And that's a separate contract that we have them sign.
Love it. Yeah, and I mean, I think we've seen the data just nationally around, right, sort of subs, and sort of, obviously, if your mom is also working in the school, or if you've been working in the school for 8 years, right, I think the idea is that most of our candidates just tend to be a much sort of less transient than the traditional ed prep population, because, right, sort of they're already in the communities, they're already working there, they already have, sort of housing and all the usual pieces. So super helpful. And I just want to clarify, I mean, obviously all the financial aid, sort of, those are all going back through the university, right? Because, right, it's the normal FAFSA process. So we're trying to sort of help create more, right, sort of pathways to access as much of the funding that's available to candidates in the normal sort of course of the FAFSA and other, right, financial aid systems, just to help reduce some of the costs for the districts. I guess, Amy, Alicia, can you talk a little bit about just sort of the difference in this idea of, right, as you've been going through the actual coursework, I think we talk about all the time this difference of, traditional higher ed, traditional sort of coursework being, right, reflection papers and sort of that more lecture environment, versus obviously this sort of teacher model, this sort of the Lake Erie model, which is really this idea of like portfolio centric. Can you just talk about some of the actual artifacts, videos that you've created in the process, and sort of what that sort of experience was, and sort of how that's different from, a more traditional, right, sort of a traditional course model?
One
Right.
of our artifacts that I actually genuinely enjoyed was the breakdown of a unit plan, a lesson plan, and internalizing all of that together and how they correlate with one another. And within that artifact submission, we have to submit a video lesson, and it's easy. It's super cake. We we sit down with our students with our camera pointed at us, and we teach the lesson that we created through the unit and the lesson plan. And we submit that and wipe our hands clean of it.
Yeah, that's another thing I really like about our unit artifacts was, like she said, the lesson planning. And I thought building routines was a good team building with your class, with the students that you have. And like she said, it's super easy. You can take your computer, you can take your phone and just point it at you somewhere in the classroom, and you can implement it doing the lessons that you already have planned. So I had a couple of math lessons that I had to do this past time, and I did it on my phone, and it was a regular math lesson. I didn't have to plan anything different. I just kept going with where we were at in the curriculum, and it was super easy to upload. And I think it's great.
But really appreciate it. Again, I know it's a very different model, this idea that we're trying to sort of change a little bit of the delivery structure for faculty. I guess, can you guys talk a little bit about some of that, like, faculty feedback in some of those artifacts, and sort of what that, Amy, you mentioned a little bit about sort of the, sort of feedback around sort of when you need to resubmit. But I think that sort of faculty feedback is always interesting, just to think about, sort of day over day, week over week. Can you share a little bit about that, sort of the feedback you've received in the process and what that's looked like so far?
So I did have one time where I did have to I don't think it was on a video, it was on, there's questions that we have to answer post video, or sometimes like we have to enter lesson plan up, and I had missed something in one of my lesson plans, so my teacher actually sent it back to me and said, this is what you're missing, or this is what I'm looking for. And I was like, oh, okay. And I went back and highlighted where it was, and then he accepted it. So I really like the feedback on that, as well as if you do have videos or anything, the faculty that I've dealt with so far has always come back and said, this is what I'm looking for. And I like that, because I'm not having to guess, okay, well, what am I missing, or having to redo the whole thing, where they're just saying, no, I just need you to redo this one part.
Amy, anything in addition to that?
I agree with Alicia. All the feedback I really like, there's no shame. If you get the wrong answer, there's, yeah, if you're not doing it correctly, it's very, hey, can you try and submit it this way? This is what I was looking for. I was actually looking for this. I'm glad you were leaning towards that. Let's maybe push a little bit more that way. Yeah, it's very, it's a pass or fail that they're looking for, and they really, really, really want you to pass. And all professors are, yeah, they're trying for you too.
Love it. Ray, can you give a sense of just sort of, I know, you know, as you've been all doing some instructional rounds, obviously other sort of things, can you give a sense just sort of more broadly of sort of the impact of the program on the district, and sort of how you're feeling now, you know, now several months in, sort of what's that look like, and sort of the sort of the bigger picture?
Well, with filling 34 positions in our district, that makes me feel really good. We still have a ways to go, and we still have positions open, but 34 is a big number, and a lot more than I was expecting so early. I can tell you that this has been a program that kind of the human resources side of the house in the district office has developed and implemented. So the academic side of our district office, they do walkthroughs at schools, and you know, they're a pretty tough group of people that walk through classrooms and what they're looking for, and they're state trained, and you know, all the things that I know all our districts have when they do those look fors. They're not, you know, usually going in and giving, you know, they do give accolades. I'm not saying that, but they're pretty straightforward with what they're looking for. They have said first, the first thing, and this is unsolicited, and say, hey, what do you think? But in conversation, if they find out afterwards, and most of the time they do, that the classroom that they've just walked through was an associate teacher, they said their feedback was they don't see a difference between that and the, you know, in the quality of instruction and a lot of the other, you know, classes they go into. Most recently, unsolicited feedback from some of their walkthroughs are that, you know, the quality of instruction that they're seeing is definitely at the level that they would like to see many of their certified teachers when they walk through doing. So there is, I don't want it to get lost what Amy and Alicia have said about the value of doing the work and getting the instruction and feedback in real time. I think those of us that went to college, you know, before last year, know that if you're in isolation somewhere sitting in a classroom, like we probably most of us on this call did, and they're learning about theory of education in isolation, and we've, you know, maybe haven't been in a classroom very much or not at all, that's a much different learning experience than being in the classroom, learning it, implementing it that day, you know, and saying, oh, that didn't work, and you know, and coming back and having that support around our new teachers, our associate teachers. So it's a much different learning environment, and the feedback has been great on our end and our experience, and on the academic side, their feedback has been very positive also.
Love it. Well, I want to make sure we get, you know, if there's any other final questions that folks have, you know, obviously want to be super conscious of time. I think has been super helpful just in terms of just sort of sharing a little bit more. I guess I'd ask each of you, any final thoughts, any things you want to share in terms of just sort of broader implications, broader thoughts on the overall sort of structure, or again, if anybody else has any sort of we can open it up to Q&A and sort of talk a little bit more if there's sort of specific details that people want to go through. But would also be interested in just sort of final thoughts that you all have in terms of, you know, what the experience has been so far and where you're going.
Well, I do want to remind everyone, if you have questions, I do have one of my mentors that works with Amy. And I do have one of our district mentors that are on the call. So if you have any questions for them, you're more than welcome to ask, and they can, you know, fill you in there too. A thought that I have that, you know, besides the fact of obviously I'm ecstatic about the progress, and just a little fact that I didn't share is that cohort 1, at the end of the first semester, we had a little celebration where we brought them up to the board to congratulate them, and 100% of them were successful. So my thought then goes, if as we develop this program and as we find it successful, just a question, what if we wrap this support around all of our teachers?
Crazy idea.
Just a question.
You know, we're getting there. It's taking some time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my final thought. If anyone else has one.
Amy, Lisa, anything you guys would share?
I agree with Ray. I do feel very privileged because when I do speak with other teachers in this school and I tell them about the program that I'm in, they're like, what do you mean you're getting your college paid for and you're working here at the same time and you're getting paid more than a sub? It is a definite privilege. And I have regular people coming in and out of my classroom, helping me with my lessons, watching me, giving me feedback right there, right then. I mean, I don't know how many times Lauren has been in my room and let me go on observation walks to where I'm watching other teachers teach and getting input from them. So it's a definite privilege, and I'm really happy I had this opportunity.
Same goes for me. I'm really glad that I had this opportunity to do this. And like Amy said, Lauren is also my district mentor, and she makes it easy. She comes like once or twice a month, or anytime we need her, we can message her. We also have our mentors that are on site that mine is on the same team as I am. She helps me, comes into my classroom. If I have any questions like, hey, I need help with this lesson, or what do you think I should do? And I've also had other paras that have expressed interest in how hard is it to do. Maybe I want to do that. The district's paying you to work and do your classes, kind of like Amy said. We've had other people that are like, oh, well, maybe I want to do that. And I tell them, I expressed to Dawn, you know, when I talked with her, that I had another para at my school that was possibly interested in it. And so there's definitely people out there that want to do it. Some of them are just scared to jump into it. But I tell them, if you have that time management and you really see yourself being a teacher and you really want to do it, then you need to do it, because it's a great opportunity.
Love it. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I mean, I guess I know, you know, Lauren, since you've obviously sort of a couple of folks been referenced, but would love any, you know, additional thoughts, if there's anything you feel like we've missed. Obviously, really appreciate all your support. I think that's come through pretty resoundingly. So thank you for that. But anything you would share in terms of your experience in the program so far?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what they said, it mirrors my feelings. It's awesome that they are able to do this learning while in the classroom and really implement it immediately. They're learning the lesson of that unit, and then their artifact is something that they're doing in their classroom, and they're implementing that learning immediately. And they can get that feedback at the site level from their instructor through BloomBoard. They have all of these avenues to get that immediate feedback, which is so important versus being in a traditional college classroom and learning the history of education. And then eventually you get to be an intern in a classroom, but you're really not getting a real life, real world experience of what it's like to run your own classroom in real time, right? A lot that happens after you graduate, and then you kind of have to learn it all over again, right? And implement it all over again. This allows them to do it all at once, which is really fantastic. And the coursework does a good job of supporting them. The beginning cohort, the first semester, is those routines and learning classroom expectations and teaching that to the students, which is what a new teacher needs to learn first off, then getting them familiar with their standards and making sure that their lessons or standards aligned. So the program itself does a good job of building them up to the level of learning that they're going to eventually need in their classroom. It's really fantastic.
Love it. Well, we certainly appreciate, yes, we've certainly come a long way from like my teacher prep and, you know, courses on zones of proximal development, which was, you know, one of my favorite, most interesting, random, sort of useless topics we ever covered. But I really appreciate all the time that you all have sort of shared here. Again, certainly if you have other questions, you know, feel free to reach out to me or Ray or any other folks, Alicia, or Lauren, because, you know, obviously I think it's a pretty amazing opportunity. Again, I think we know across the country, certainly in Florida, right, we know that there are a lot of folks who have pretty much been locked out of the system, right, in the way that it's been designed for the normal 20-year-old, you know, ed prep candidate. And that the ability for us to sort of unlock this structure and create a more job embedded delivery approach to a degree is really, really powerful and has lots of pretty amazing implications for where we go and how we solve the shortage. So really appreciate all of the time that you all have sort of shared. Really excited to see sort of where this all goes. And Ray, as we continue to push, and someday maybe all teachers will have a lot of one-on-one feedback in their classrooms because that's now possible. So thank you all for the time. Really appreciate it. Let us know if you have other questions. Otherwise, we can close things out here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.